This is the reading for the Chapter 7 Genetics packet. Please follow along in your packet and use reader's marks. The science of heredity. Heredity is the passage of genetic traits from one generation to the next. It is controlled by the chromosomes in the nucleus of the cell. Chromosomes are made of DNA, which is a compound. Chromosomes are composed of units called genes. During reproduction, genes move from one generation to the next on the chromosomes. Genes control the development of a trait. A pair or two genes control each trait. Sometimes genes mutate or change. Genetic mutations are hereditary and result in new characteristics in an organism. In asexually reproducing organisms, all the genes come from one parent. This results in offspring that are genetically identical to the parent. In sexual reproduction, each parent contributes half of the genes. Therefore, the offspring are not identical to the parents. They are a mixture of the genetic material from both parents. Therefore, you have a wider variety of traits from sexual reproduction. Let's pause here. Please pause the video and answer the questions 1 through 7. When you are ready, turn the page and press play for probability of inheritance. Probability of inheritance. Most genes are either dominant or recessive. Dominant genes are the traits that will usually appear in the individual. An offspring for a gene with brown eyes and a gene for blue eyes will have brown eyes because the brown eyes are a dominant trait. Recessive genes are hidden by the dominant gene. If an offspring has one gene for blue eyes and one gene for brown eyes, they will have brown eyes because blue eyes are a recessive trait. A blue-eyed person must have both recessive genes for blue eyes. So in order for somebody to show a recessive trait, they must have both recessive genes. Some recessive traits are common in populations. For example, having 5 fingers is controlled by a recessive gene. Since most of us have 5 fingers, this recessive gene is the most common in the human population. Type O blood is also an example of a recessive gene being most common in human population. Take a few moments and answer questions 8, 9, and 10 on the opposite page. When you are ready, press play to begin the reading again. In completing genetic problems, the trait studied is represented by a letter such as A. The dominant gene is represented by a capital letter, in this case the capital A. And the recessive gene is represented by the lowercase letter, in this case a lowercase a. In a pair of genes, the following possibilities exist. If we have both dominant, so both parents give a dominant trait, then the individual or the offspring will show the dominant trait. If you have 2 pairs of the recessive traits, or the lowercase letters, then you will show the recessive trait. If you are given one that is dominant and another that is recessive, so a capital A and a lowercase a, or a capital letter and a lowercase letter, you will show the dominant trait. The Punnett square is a tool that shows the probable results of a genetic cross of 2 parents. It shows the probability of a trait being expressed in the offspring, and we know probabilities are expressed in percents. The chart below shows the possible results when 2 purple flowers are crossed. So we have purple flowers as a capital F, and it is dominant over yellow flowers, which is a lowercase f. And we can see that one parent has a capital F and a lowercase f, so they are showing purple flowers because it is dominant. And we can see the other parent also has a capital F and a lowercase f. That means that they are showing purple flowers because they are dominant. And they have 4 possibilities for offspring. They have one offspring that could have 2 dominant Fs, so that this one's definitely going to have purple flowers right here. We have another offspring who has a capital F and a lowercase f. That means that they are carrying the dominant trait and the recessive trait, but they still are going to show purple flowers. And we have a third offspring that could possibly have, which would be a capital F and a lowercase f again, which is having the dominant trait and the recessive trait, purple flowers again, but they also have the possibility of having an offspring that has both the recessive traits, both the lowercase f, so which means that this offspring right here would have yellow flowers. All of the rest of them would have purple. If we were to put this in as a percent, we would see that 75% or 3/4 of the offspring could have purple flowers and 25% could have yellow flowers. That doesn't mean that they're going to definitely have 4 children with 3 of them having purple flowers and 1 of them having yellow. That's just stating that statistically speaking, it's more likely that they will have offspring with purple flowers and then they will have offsprings with yellow flowers. Please take a moment to complete questions 11 and 12 in your packet. Press pause, and when you are ready, you can press play again, and we will begin the next section, which is pedigree charts. Pedigree charts trace a genetic trait in a family tree. It shows the presence or absence of a particular trait in each member of a generation. The following pedigree chart shows the inheritance of right-handedness in humans over 3 generations. The gene for right-handedness, or capital R, is dominant over the gene for left-handedness, or lowercase r. And as we look at this, we have this chart right here, that's just below, we have one generation, our first generation. We have a grandmother and a grandfather. The grandmother is right-handed. She has a capital R and a lowercase r. That means that she carries the recessive trait. And we have a grandfather who is left-handed, and all he has is the left-handed trait. The second generation shows a father. They had one child, a son, and he married. He has left-handed. He married a right-handed woman. And they had 3 children in the third generation. We have a daughter who's left-handed, a daughter who is right-handed, and a son who is right-handed. Notice that all of the females are circles. Notice that all of the males are squares. Occasionally, you will also see that they will show, rather than giving you the gene types right inside of the boxes as they did in this example, they will do something where they might color in the circles or the boxes solid. If you have it colored in solid, that means generally that they are showing the dominant trait. So if we were going to show this particular family pedigree chart, we would, without showing the particular traits inside, we could draw it like so. We would have grandma, because she is right-handed, which is dominant, as a dark circle, with grandfather as an open square because he has the recessive trait, and they would have their one child who is open because he has this recessive trait, who marries a woman who has the dominant trait, and they have 3 children. We have one daughter that has the left-handed trait, we have one daughter who is dominant, and we have one son who is dominant as well. So oftentimes when they're looking at these charts, they'll give it to you like this, and they're going to ask you what the traits were from each parent in order to have the offspring that they have. So you would have to create a Punnett square from these to determine what the likelihood is or what the likely traits are, and then try to figure out, for example, here we have somebody who is not dominant and somebody who is dominant, and they have 3 children, you'd have to figure out like what their particular traits are. Does this person have both dominant genes or just one recessive gene with one dominant gene? All right, take a moment, answer the question 13, which is on page 98, and A, B, and C are related to the pedigree